Thank you for tuning into Our Voices. I have a special guest with me. He is Joe Solomon. He is no stranger to the community of Charleston, West Virginia. He is running for at large for City Council here in Charleston, West Virginia. Joe, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on and giving me an excuse to get buttoned up and pinned up, I appreciate it.
There's nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with that at all. Before I get into my questions, Joe, please tell the audience something about Joe Solomon.
Sure. My name's Joe Solomon. I'm running for City Council at large, as Ray put it. And for the last decade, I've been helping folks in Charleston come together to address challenges and to come up with solutions. That's a big way of saying that whenever there's been a crisis, I've been there to help. When the water crisis hit, I helped coordinate the Clean Water Hub, and we coordinated clean water deliveries throughout the region, throughout Charleston and beyond, especially to vulnerable members of our communities, including seniors. When there was a spike in Islamophobia during Trump's ascendancy, we organized a huge rally on Charleston's waterfront where hundreds of people came out to show that our Muslim neighbors and our refugee neighbors are our neighbors and are close to us, and we hold them dear. And we held that huge rally, and we tried to put that xenophobia a bit more back into the closet. I brought economic revitalization to Charleston's downtown, helping Taylor Books open up its used book room, and helping to open up the first downtown co-working space on Hale Street as a pilot a few years ago. And I continue to help with Charleston's overdose crisis. I'm a social worker, and I'm a student in a doctorate in public health program, or newly admitted a student. And for the past 3-4 years, I've been racing with SOAR volunteers and team members to give out as much Narcan as possible to save as many lives from the overdose crisis as possible. For the past, just since COVID, working with SOAR, with my co-director, Stacy Kay, and a whole family of folks, we've distributed over 20,000 Narcan doses since COVID. So it's been a very humbling journey this past decade, and I'm running for City Council again. And this is that race. And I'm running with the Charleston Can't Wait slate, which is a great group of 9 candidates running up and down the council ballot to serve with open hearts and bold service.
Joe, you've done a lot of work for the city of Charleston. You have done a lot of work. You've stayed busy. Thank you. Thank you very much. Joe, let's get started. One of the issues that has been, kind of hooked around your ankle is the needle exchange. You caught hell over it, and you were a previous guest on Our Voices, but now, like I said, we changed it up. We're talking about politics here. The needle exchange program, folks have badmouthed you and basically called you out your name because of where you were doing this at. So tell me, Joe, how, and maybe you don't want to tell me. If you don't want to, just to say next question. How is it coming along now? And are you doing it in a different location, giving out needles in a different location?
These are good questions. How deep do you want us to go, Ray? It's on everything's on the table, so we can talk about all this stuff, of course.
Deep as deep as you want to go.
Okay. Well, to really understand, I think the way that the community has been grappling with harm reduction these past few years, I do think it's worth going all the way back to 2018. The stuff is nuanced and complex, but it is graspable, it is understandable, it is solvable. In 2018, it wasn't just a city council race, it was a mayoral race. And it was a mayoral race between 2 new voices. And one voice was running on compassion and solutions, and the other, and that was Mayor Goodwin. At the time, she was just a candidate. and her opponent was running, was less of a table name, and had a political strategy to slander harm reduction programs as a way to win that election. So candidate Goodwin's opponent spent months slandering and haranguing and attacking our then health department's harm reduction program, which was actually nationally recognized. And that haranguing, that harassment, those attacks left a deep stain in our community. It left a thick blanket of fear and stigma in our community that we haven't really shook or reckoned with. And so that's the blanket we find ourselves under. That's the stain we still have on our city. And so that program in March 2018, due to all those political attacks, which were driven politically, that were politically motivated on the health department, in March 2018, that program shuttered at the health department. And that left a huge crater in our community. Public health scientists, social workers, nurses, doctors, pharmacists, they all warned us, if we don't have harm reduction in our community, we don't have a low barrier, accessible syringe program in our community, HIV will go up, hepatitis C will go up, overdoses will go up, endocarditis will go up. It will be a very tragic situation. And those predictions came true. We now have record Hep C, record overdoses, record HIV. Charleston is home to the most concerning HIV outbreak in the United States, according to the CDC. Our county loses a loved one every other day for the last full year that we have data for. This is really awful stuff. And it's driven by that crater that losing that program left in our community. So working with the SOAR family and SOAR volunteers and again, national leaders who were, public health scientists who offered us guidance, we tried to put the pieces back together right here in Charleston. And we set up health fairs. We didn't quite know where to have them. So we just had them in big parking lots around the city. This is a key word, around the city. And we followed CDC guidances, which have been available since 2018, I believe, certainly 2019, 2020, and so on, which said, offer people what they need, give people what they need. And that will be a form of healthcare. That's a form of healthcare, and it's a form of dignity. And so we asked people what they needed. We gave them sterile syringes. We took back their used syringes. We gave them Narcan. We connected them with recovery coaches. We connected them with wound care. We connected them with clothing. We connected them with housing. We connected them with Medicaid. We had these health fairs that were the most beautiful thing. They were just the best of Charleston on full display. And they were in parking lots across the city, pop-up health fairs across the city. And as we went, I think this is 2019, 2020, we were chased off of these parking lots. It turns out it's not the most popular thing to serve people who use drugs. Turns out that's not how you win a popularity contest in Charleston, And so we were shifted from that parking lot, shifted from that parking lot, shifted from over there, shifted from over there. And eventually we were serving so many people, we needed a place to go. And the good folks at the Unitarian Universalist congregation on Canal Boulevard, sort of the gateway into the West Side, said, you can use our parking lot. And it was sanctuary. We'd been offering mercy and healthcare to folks for months, and it had been kind of traumatic because we didn't have sanctuary. So now we had sanctuary. And then these fairs bloomed and bloomed. And it turns out that zip code 25302, where we had those health fairs, why were they so popular there, even more so than they were elsewhere in the city, is the highest zip code for overdose responses in the county, which leads the state. 25302 is the highest overdose 911 responses in the county, which leads the state, and the highest place where we find new HIV cases in the most concerning HIV outbreak in the country. Right. So we were connecting with people that needed these services, and it was very fast paced, and it was very urgent and life and death. And that led to some bad process. By setting up these fairs and trying to keep them going, while we were being sort of shifted around the city, we skipped a vital step. And that vital step was checking in with more members of the community, going door to door, checking in with pastors, checking in even with businesses, and saying, hey, we're doing this thing. How can we do it better? How can we work with you to make this a more holistic solution for this community? And even though we had plenty of volunteers and leaders, most of the SOAR staff and board members are from the West Side. Even though we were serving hundreds and hundreds of people from that community, we still skipped that vital step, that deep check-in. And you mentioned how it's been a little bit of rough water since of trying to rebuild that trust with the community and rebuild those relationships. So that's kind of still where we are. We're still meeting with pastors. We're still meeting with community members. We're still serving. Indeed, I think the things that SOAR is most known for these past few months, it's been 10 months since we've shifted out of that health fair model. I think you asked what's next for SOAR, what's SOAR doing? And the things that SOAR are doing right now, the flagship things that we're known for are monthly syringe litter cleanup programs in which we fan out across the city. We launched this in January with folks who generally have lived experience, who know where these syringes are, and get them, and get trash, all the trash that we can too. So we're picking up garbage bags of trash. We're picking up syringes once a month. We're actually even able to pay folks. So if anyone listening wants to be a part of this, you can join us once a month. Just go to the SOAR Facebook page. And during those past 10 months, we've also tripled the number of the city's syringe disposal boxes. That's a big deal. Those are 24/7 available syringe disposal boxes that are each huge. It can take all your syringes. It can take folks' syringes, and people are dropping them by the bushel, and we're getting them to a biohazard company for proper disposal. So those two things are two big things that are in play right now.
Joe, you have explained extensively about the needle exchange program and how effective it is in Charleston. And I know you don't stay in one spot, in one location. Another issue is because you're running for at large, and explain to the audience, what is the difference between being a council member at large and being a council member in a certain ward? Please explain to that.
There's a difference, maybe more in spirit than anything else. Anyone can vote for an at-large seat. So the city has 6 at-large councilors and 20 wards. 6 at-large, 20 wards. Each councilor has the same voting power, as far as I can tell, and the same standing on council. So 6 at-large, 20 wards. And what I found canvassing in every neighborhood, certainly in 2018 and again now in 2022, is that most folks are still looking for a counselor that they can rely on, whose number they have in their back pocket. So an at-large person can canvass everywhere and say, you can call me and I'll connect you with resources and I'll try to find you solutions. And those ward counselors absolutely can too. And I've been knocking on doors with Charleston Can't Wait ward candidates, and we've been making sure that they know that this candidate will be there for that person's challenges, whether it could be anything from potholes to slumlords. And so we've been trying to build these relationships. And so basically an at-large person gets to do that all over the city. It's kind of a bigger wingspan, and a ward person needs to keep the whole city in mind, but is definitely responsible for their ward.
Joe, what are your thoughts on economic building in Charleston?
Tell me more.
New businesses.
New businesses.
Big businesses.
Big.
Of course, when it comes to new businesses coming into West Virginia, you have to think about taxes. And this is something that I ask a lot of the candidates about, the taxes, because again, a lot of folks don't like when these companies come in, they set up shop, they get the tax breaks and everything, and once it expires, then they up and leave.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, what are your thoughts on bringing new businesses here into Charleston?
I think I think nobody's coming here to save Charleston. Nobody's ever come here to save West Virginia. And sometimes there's this idea that if we court enough of these big businesses, then we can revitalize our population, and we can revitalize our downtowns, and all will be copas. All will be good. I don't think we have time for that. I don't think it's a sustainable model, and I don't think it plays out very well. I think the people of Charleston are here to save Charleston. I think that people of West Virginia are here to renew West Virginia. And so my focus is more on small businesses and building downtowns in every neighborhood that are thriving. And I'm a small business owner. I'm a used bookseller. I set up used book nooks in cafes and shops around the city and the state. And one thing that really helped get my business going early, I forget what this was. It was 5 years ago. I'm looking at the check I won. I won an award 5 years ago for my small business to help get it going off the ground. It was from Strong Mountain Communities. It was an effort of Coalfield Development, and it was huge. It allowed me to build up my business. And the city of Charleston has done occasional and fantastic rounds of mini grants for small businesses. I would like that to be an annual, reliable anchor for our small business community, where you can tap into funding and you can tap into mentorship from the city of Charleston to bring your business to the next level. I'd like that to be a regular annual thing that small business owners can rely on here to get their business scaled and scaled up so they can stay and survive in tough terrain.
Joe, when we look at playgrounds, places for kids to play, do you see any untapped territory that can a playground set can be built there?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The city has $100 million budget most years. Currently, its budget is about $136 million with the American Rescue Funds. In other words, the city has never had more money than in the history of money. So when we're talking about ways to invest in our youth or advocate for our seniors, yeah, absolutely, we should be prioritizing our budget to fund those kinds of programs. One program idea that's part of the Charleston Can't Wait platform is a youth council which we currently have a version of it, but that has a $2 million budget it can spend every year. So to have a youth council that can actually direct the funds that it decides and chooses what young people want to invest in, so that they can prosper here, so that they're more likely to define their destiny right here in Charleston, even as they grow. So I would hope that we can get that off the ground, and that young people could be like, hey, we're hanging out over there and we need a better basketball hoop, or we're hanging out over there and we need a playground with more swings. So to give that task force some real annual funding, then we could have youth-led solutions in the city of Charleston.
Joe, you say that Amy is working with a $136 million budget because of the American Rescue Funds. And it's believed that some employees have gotten a 4% raise. Was it just the county?
I'm not as versed into that. I can look into that and get back to you on that.
Okay. So when we look at the pay raise, okay, let's say when that money runs out from the American Rescue Funds, do you think that the city will be able to sustain paying those employees that received a 4% pay raise?
Gosh, that's a very surgical question. I would hope that when they voted on a raise, if they did, that they built a sustainable model for keeping it going. I'd have to look into that more and get back to you. I will stress that even on fair weather years, when we have this roughly $100 million budget, people are often surprised at the way that it's prioritized, and I think there's a real passion for making sure we're prioritizing it in our communities, in our parks and rec, for our seniors, for overdose crisis response, in our schools, in public health. And I think there's a great respect for our city's workers and making sure that they're paid well and sustained well. I would also add that while something rounding 1,000 folks work for the city of Charleston, I think thousands and thousands of people work in Charleston, and they don't work for the city of Charleston. They just work here, and many of them for fast food jobs or are pretty low income jobs. And we should have a city council that's fighting to make sure that those workers, all of the workers in the city of Charleston, can make a living wage, can get paid sick leave, can get fair scheduling. And that is a conversation that has yet to really start in City Hall. And then I'm excited to work with the Charleston Can't Wait slate, which includes other at-large candidates, including Deanna McKinney and Corey Zinn, that altogether our at-large candidates and our ward folks can really ignite that conversation in City Hall, again, about living wage, about paid sick leave, and about fair scheduling for all the workers in Charleston.
Joe, you have answered my questions. I have a few more, then we'll let you go.
Okay, great.
Okay.
This is great. I appreciate the time. Thanks,
hey, man. Hey, thank you for coming on Our Voices. One other issue that Charleston's facing, and I have to admit, is the issue of race. Tell me your thoughts on that. And tell me what solutions do you see that can take place into rectifying this ongoing problem?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. And it's weird to have, I think, you asking me for that in this dynamic. Truly, I've been listening to leaders in the Black community for years now on the solutions that we need on this front. And leaders like Takaya Smith for years have been petitioning the city for simple and clear solutions that can help us address the harms in our city, the racial harms in our city. One of those that comes up again and again is for a citizen review board across the US, have these boards, and some of them with actual teeth, where they can review practices and review incidents and offer unbiased recommendations and follow-ups so that tragic occurrences don't happen again. But we don't have that in Charleston. We have a black box, so to speak. We don't know what's going on in that box, where if someone gets shot or someone gets tased or someone gets beat up, and there's racial harm involved, maybe there's a lawsuit, and maybe something can come of that, but there's no real mechanism for long-term change from the CPD. And city council's mum on it. And so it shouldn't be. That's been a clear ask from the community for years, led by the CARE Coalition and led by pastors and led by black leaders throughout Charleston. And I just think it's not rocket science at all. Our citizens should have, our community should have a citizen review board, ASAP. Is that the only solution? Of course not. Our city needs to be sharing better data on its racial profiling so that we can actually have our real hands around the crisis at hand when it comes to our racial harms, when it comes to policing. And I think our city does a lot to police the pain, where we need to be serving the pain and addressing the pain. And that is a reprioritization and a reorientation that I'm ready for, that I think many members in Charleston are ready for, including members on the west side and in North Charleston, where we can invest into our youth, into our parks and rec, into youth services, into a youth task force with real funding, into mental health, into a 24/7 trauma-informed center where young people can go to get services to find solace and sanctuary. That's an idea that was baked and brewed by Dr. Shaniqua Smith on Charleston's west side. These kinds of ideas, these kind of community solutions are at our fingertips if we can get folks who are willing to speak up on city council.
Joe, one last question for me. The dilapidated houses, they're tearing them down. What are your thoughts on that? And um, should they be replaced with new houses?
You know, I hear about this all the time. I'd say it's in the top three things we hear when we knock on doors. We've been knocking on hundreds and hundreds of doors, and over 1,000 4 years ago. People often say, you know, what's up with this dilapidated house that's next to mine that's lowering our value? What's up with folks squatting in this house and causing folks to be uncomfortable maybe? And we hear from houseless folks of how come we can't actually have the power to rebuild these places and then have a place to stay. So it's really a challenge for all of us. And I think that there's a solution for all of us too. And we hear it from all fronts. Why don't we figure out a way to create, a public housing authority that funds the rebuilding and the refurbishing of these housing units across the city and pays people a living wage, people who are houseless or have challenged housing, to do this work and to help them get a place where they can stay and sustain themselves. Then you would have updated housing, you'd be addressing the houseless crisis, and neighbors across the spectrum, homed and houseless, would have sunnier days. And so that feels like a ripe opportunity, where if we actually made it less about are we bulldozing them, and more about how are we actually seeing this as an opportunity for a solution that works for all of us. And I'm down for that. I'm also down for some bulldozing, and I know the city actually has a pretty good track record on that front of moving forward and getting to a place where they can level a house if it's a lost cause.
Joe, pretty much done.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we've covered the main things that you are looking forward into changing if you're elected. Now, I'm sure there's probably a few things that I may not have covered. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. The question is, why are you running for city council? You have 3 minutes. And again, if there's something that we haven't touched on, feel free to mention it, okay?
Thanks.
Let me know when you're ready.
Oh, right, you're clocking me.
Huh?
You're going to clock me?
No, I'm not going to clock you. Give me 3 minutes.
Okay. All right.
Ready?
I'm ready. All right. I've been ready.
Go.
I'm running for the city of Charleston for city council seat at large. My name is Joe Solomon, and I'm running for that seat with the Charleston Can't Wait slate to find solutions that work for all of us. I've been running since 2018. When I ran in 2018, I got to people's doors from North Charleston to South Hills, from Kanawha City to the East End to the West Side. And when I knocked on people's doors, I said, I'm here to help. And I forgot to say, I'm here to help if I win. I forgot to say if I win. So I think that was tricky, because then I lost by 114 votes, closest runner up. But I forgot to say if I win. So I promised everyone I would help. I would help on the overdose crisis front, on economic development, on supporting our youth, supporting our seniors. And so I've been racing the past 4 years to field calls, to do the work, to keep our people whole. I've been racing forward with friends at SOAR and with friends across the city to do the good work, to save lives and to renew our families. And it's been really hard. And I think I'm running because sometimes city council makes it much harder than it needs to be. I'm running because I see the helpers not helped enough. And I'm running because I think the bar is set too low, and we're certainly not running to play limbo. We're running for overdose zero, for HIV zero, for housing for everyone, for decriminalization of cannabis, for a budget that works for all of us, for solutions that work for all of us. And I think it's time we had voices of courage and voices of boldness and community organizers on city council. I think it's time we had mamas and social workers and teachers and public health scientists and hospital workers on council. I think it's time we maybe took a bit of a break from the lawyers and the landlords and the lobbyists. Maybe we should see what it's like to have a few folks on council that say, maybe it's time we really, really got to work for everyone and with Godspeed. So that's why I'm running for city council and why I'm running with the Charleston Can't Wait slate.
Joe Solomon, my friend, I thank you very much for coming on Our Voices. You take care and be safe, okay?
Thank you, Ray. Thank you for your time.